Welcome to our Explainer. Today, we're tackling that really frustrating gap between what you learn in a classroom and what you actually need to know to do your job. You know the one. So let's get into it. I mean, we've all been there, right? You get your degree, you've read all the textbooks, and then on your first day of work, boom, you realize there's this massive world of practical skills you know nothing about. Well, that's what's known as the theory-practice gap, and it's a really big deal in professional development. But what if there was a special kind of expert who could actually bridge that gap for us? You know, someone who has one foot firmly planted in the world of academic theory and the other right in the middle of professional practice. Well, turns out that person exists. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into that theory-practice gap. Then we'll meet our hero, the Pracademic. After that, we'll look at their teaching superpower, uncover the tricky paradox they live with, and finally, we'll chew on what all this means for how we learn. All right, section 1. Let's start with the problem itself, this theory-practice gap. You can think of it as this huge disconnect between the clean, theoretical knowledge you get in a university and the messy, practical skills you actually need to survive on the job. So how do we fix this? Well, one really interesting solution is something called work-based learning, or WBL for short. It's designed to attack this skills gap head-on. A great example is the UK's higher degree apprenticeships. Get this, students spend 80% of their time on the job and only 20% in the classroom, so the learning is happening right there in the real world. And that brings us to the person who's at the absolute heart of work-based learning, the one who makes it all click. It's time to meet the hero of our story, the Pracademic. Okay, so think about it like this. Traditionally, you've got two totally separate camps. You have the academic, who's all about theory and research, living inside the university walls. Then you have the practitioner, who's out in the trenches, focused on application and industry. A lot of the time, it's like they're speaking two completely different languages. And this is where the Pracademic comes in. They stand right smack in the middle. They're this incredible hybrid, a scholar practitioner who connects theory with practice. You know, like a university professor who's had a long, successful career in their industry, or a top professional who also teaches a course at the local college. They live at that exact intersection. The research on this is so cool. It uses all these amazing metaphors to describe them. They're a bridge connecting two separate islands. They're a translator helping two different cultures communicate. They're called boundary spanners and dual citizens because they're totally fluent in both the world of ideas and the world of action. So the big question is, how do they actually do it? How do they pass on this special hybrid knowledge? Well, that brings us to their superpower. Okay, they have this amazing tool in their toolbox called the cognitive apprentice model. Now, think of a regular apprenticeship, like for a carpenter, right? But instead of learning a physical skill, you're learning how to think like an expert. The whole point is to take all those hidden internal thoughts an expert has and make them visible, make them something you can actually see and learn from. And it follows these 4 key steps. First up is modeling. This is where the expert literally thinks out loud while doing a task, explaining every little decision. Next, you have coaching and scaffolding. The expert is right there, guiding the beginner, giving them support, like training wheels on a bike. And finally, there's fading. The expert slowly removes that support until, bam, the novice can do it all by themselves. And this really gets to the heart of it. It's not just about getting the right answer. It's about showing the messy, winding, often invisible path an expert takes to get to that answer. The whole goal is to make thinking visible. So why is this so critical? Well, here's the thing. Experts are constantly having this rich internal conversation with themselves, weighing different options, playing out scenarios. A novice? They're usually just hunting for that one right answer. So this whole think aloud thing, it pulls back the curtain and lets the novice listen in on that expert's internal dialogue. But, you know, it's not all sunshine and roses. Living in two worlds like this, it comes with some serious challenges. And that brings us to what we're calling the Pracademics paradox. This whole dual identity thing can create a lot of friction. Pracademics often talk about feeling really isolated, you know? Like they're not quite academic enough for the university and not quite practitioner enough for their industry colleagues. They're always having to re-explain who they are. And the institutions themselves can pull them in opposite directions. The university wants research papers, but the industry wants immediate results. And the Pracademic is stuck right in the middle of that tug of war.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. In trying to live in two different professional worlds, the pracademic can end up feeling like an outsider in both. It's the classic tension of being a bridge, isn't it? You connect two shores, but you don't really belong to either one.
So, with all that in mind, what's the big takeaway here? Let's bring it all together in our final section, rethinking how we learn. When you boil it all down, the real magic of the Pracademics is their ability to teach something called reflection in action. It's that critical skill of being able to think about what you're doing while you're doing it and then making adjustments on the fly. And honestly, that's one of the most important skills you can have in any complex job today.
But just when we're ready to put the pracademic on a pedestal, the research throws us a curveball, a really interesting one. It forces us to ask, could there be a hidden downside to this very identity? Basically, the question is this: does labeling yourself a pracademic actually limit you? Does it create this kind of glass ceiling where people see you as not quite a real academic, one who also needs to build deep research skills? By embracing this hybrid role, are you accidentally putting a cap on your own potential?
And that brings us full circle, right back to that feeling of being unprepared for the real world. The Pracademic looks like the perfect solution, but their own story leaves us with this huge lingering question to chew on. Is this unique identity a vital bridge that we desperately need? Or is it a kind of golden cage? Something valuable, yes, but in the end, something that holds you back?